think we need to be okay as marketers to say it's okay to admit this is going to be challenging. Because if we admit that in our messaging, in our videos, in our website copy, whatever it might be, we're already saying to the student, we understand what this feels like. I think it's important to have adult learners on staff, people that have gone that non-traditional route, because it just presents a unique way to connect to those students. And, you're saying, I've been through this. I understand what you're feeling. And here's how I can sort of address some of your anxiety and your concerns.
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast here on the B Podcast Network. This is a show dedicated to helping higher ed marketers tell better stories, create better content, and enroll more students. My name's John Azzoni. I'm the founder at Unveiled, and we're a video production company working specifically with college marketing teams to make it easy for them to scale up and even automate their student and alumni success stories through our subscription approach. And you can learn more about that at unveiled.tv, and that's UNVEILD.tv. If you're listening to this podcast for the first time, go ahead and subscribe. We'd love to have you. And if you're wanting your college and university's content to resonate on a deeper emotional level with prospective students, with alumni, with parents, whatever, I want you to subscribe to my free newsletter. Every week I send out tips and insights on creating more emotionally resonant content, including examples and best practices from other institutions, articles and blog posts, that week's podcast episode, and much more. So head over to unveiled.tv/newsletter and sign up. All right, let's get on with the show. My guest today is Shane Baglini. Shane is the Senior Director of Marketing and Recruitment for the Division of Graduate and Continuing Education at Muhlenberg College in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where he's responsible for all marketing and recruitment strategies. A first-generation college student, Shane is passionate about connecting students to the life-changing possibilities of education through authentic storytelling and brand building. Shane, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So first off, tell us something that people would be surprised to know about you, something personal.
Yeah. Okay. So two things. So I actually started my career working in sports. Both of my master's and undergrad degrees are in sport management. So I started off working in minor league baseball, Olympic sports, collegiate sports. And one of the funniest stories I always tell people is when I worked in professional sports, I was down in Philadelphia. And we worked in the Sixers and Flyers arena, and our conference room windows overlooked the Eagles Stadium. And I'll never forget one time during a meeting, we all kind of looked out the window and the circus was in town. And there were literal elephants and tigers and camels being walked through the parking lot. And to this day, that's still the most memorable meeting I've ever had. So if we could top that on these Zoom calls, that'd be great.
I've never seen an elephant in one of my meetings.
Yeah, it was great. And the guy running the meeting said, remember, if you ever get stressed or overwhelmed, you work in a place where elephants are walking through the parking lot. So it was a cool moment. And then on the personal side, sticking with the sports theme, I'm a lifelong diehard Miami Dolphins fan, and people might be surprised by that because they're wondering how can somebody endure that kind of pain and angst for 35 consecutive years, but I still do it every year.
Well, I live in Detroit and we have the Lions, and that's the same thing here.
So you know my pain better than others.
I was never a sports person, but I do love just the culture of watching sports. It's something nostalgic about when the weather starts turning cold and Sunday afternoon football. So I'll watch the Lions when I can. And I'm I just expect they're going to lose. I actually had a streak for a while of anytime I tuned in, they would win. So I was all right, I guess this is my job now. I have a responsibility.
Yeah, they got a good team this year, so you got to be there for all 18 weeks.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about the marketing world that you live in. Your world is adult students. Define those students, what you mean by that. Just tell us a little bit about your role.
Sure. So I'll give you kind of an overview of our department at Muhlenberg. We are kind of like a mini college in and of ourselves. We've got faculty members that we hire. We've got advisors, financial aid dedicated to adult learners. And Muhlenberg's been doing adult education for 110 years now. So we've got a deep background in that. In 2020, we launched our graduate school. So we're new to the graduate space relatively. So that's a kind of a brief overview, and then I'm sort of in charge of all the marketing and enrollment management functions in that division. Adult student, to me, probably like most others, I would consider an adult student somebody that's 25 or older. But I think the nuance for me, and maybe for some others, is sort of when we talk about that non-traditional student. I would consider pretty much anybody that hasn't gone on that like high school to college, maybe a gap year in between type of trajectory. So people that are coming in with some college, no degree, no college, no degree, but have something's happened that they're re-entering school. I would consider those the non-traditional students, and I think it's interesting to look around higher ed at how others are approaching adult learner recruitment, retention, etc. We've all known about the enrollment cliff for how long now? It's here, and I still look around and don't think there's enough resources, attention, learning around recruiting non-traditional and adult learners, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, it seems to be like we're at a tipping point where like the non-traditional students are the new traditional students. Where it's like I saw someone, it might have been Ryan Morabito or someone posted on LinkedIn, where it's like the adult students are like outnumbering these traditional college students coming out of high school, which is super interesting to me.
Yeah, I love that phrase. I love that phrase. I might have to use it. The new traditional student. Yeah, I mean, go look around the higher ed conference landscape and look at a marketing enrollment specific conference not called NAGAP, and I dare you to find an agenda with more than one session on recruiting adult learners.
Yeah.
So that I feel like I don't know that we're prepared as an industry for adult learners because we've thought of them in such a different way than we need to be right now for how hundreds of years.
Yeah. So what are some unique challenges that adult students are coming into a graduation or continuing studies situation with?
Yeah, so this is where the adult student is really interesting to market to. I mean, just think about life, right? Life in and of itself, work, family, whatever else you have going on can be a challenge in and of itself. Now add school onto that, add going back for your master's degree onto that, and it seems like it might be overwhelming and not possible. Yeah. So, I feel like that's the place that I start from with adult learners when we're messaging to them, when we're creating content. Just understanding the emotional kind of journey of going back to school is very different for an adult student. Graduate students, they've kind of been there, done that. They know what to expect. They've gone through undergrad, so they're kind of used to the whole process. For somebody that is completing their degree, I've heard stories from our advisors of people being an hour late for a meeting because they were sitting in the car in the parking lot, debating whether or not to even come inside for the meeting.
Wow.
So, approaching the adult learner with that in mind is a great place to start, for me anyway, in terms of, okay, what's the most effective way to connect with these students?
Yeah, there's probably a different emotional storm, kind of going on. Most of my video work is actually with adult students. I don't know, there's not much of a rhyme or reason for that, but just in my experience of, telling adult student stories, it's different from someone coming out of high school. It's an adult students. They've oftentimes hit a wall where like something needed to change. And then there's a lot of anxiety around that, whether or not they can get over this hurdle and make that change through, upping their education and things like that. So it's really a very specific kind of pain point that they're coming to college with.
Yeah. And I think it's okay. I think we need to be okay as marketers to say it's okay to admit this is going to be challenging, because if we admit that in our messaging, in our videos, in our website copy, whatever it might be, emails, we're already saying to the student, we understand what this feels like. And that's where I think it's important to, any school with continuing education, graduate studies, things of that nature, I think it's important to have adult learners on staff, people that have gone that non-traditional route,
Mm-hmm.
because it just presents a unique way to connect to those students. And, you're saying, I've been through this. I understand what you're feeling. And here's how I can sort of address some of your anxiety and your concerns.
Right, right. Yeah, you made a point about just honesty, and it's okay to say that this is going to be hard. And especially in the last year, I appreciate and I trust brands that are honest like that. Like, I get served all these like coaching ads in my social media feeds. They pick up that I'm a business owner and they are, selling me some course or whatever, and everything they're pitching is, I made $1 million overnight and you can too, and it will be easy, is essentially the message that they're sending. And, in my experience of trying, some of these courses, it's not at all like that. Nothing is ever easy. If someone is marketing this to you, like, this is going to be turnkey for you, and we're going to take, everything off your plate. It's going to be so easy. You're going to, wake up with a degree. I don't trust you.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, you talk about like outcomes data, where people are working, where, their salary increases, all that kind of stuff. That's great. And that means a lot to the adult learner and the graduate learners, but failing to communicate how that person got there and what that was like for them, I think is missing a huge opportunity to be really authentic and say, this was really challenging.
Mm-hmm.
To do all this is really challenging, but look at the ROI, look at the outcome that happened here. So I think you need to focus on all parts of that story, not just look at where our graduates are employed and with a nice grid of logos on your website. That's great.
Right.
But that's only half the story.
Yeah, there's this really good book that I just read. I can't remember what it's called. I never remember what the books are called. If you listen to this podcast more than a few episodes, you'll know that I'm always getting stuck on what these books are called. But I read a book and it was about content marketing. And what I appreciated so much about the author was his perspective that from page one, he said, this is going to be hard. You're not going to see any traction probably for like 8 or 9 months, maybe a year. It depends on how much you're willing to put in. You might have to put in like 20 hours a week into this effort that you might not see direct results from for another year. Are you willing to do that? If you are, here's the roadmap. And for me, that was so validating, because I'm a content marketer. I work with schools who are doing content, and my thing is I like to bring schools, like higher ed marketers, along with me in my business journey, because I feel like I'm on the same trajectory as all of them, just for a different purpose. And content marketing, it's tough. Like, it doesn't always work. Storytelling doesn't always work. And you'll hit these walls where you're like, I'm putting content out every day. I'm telling stories. I'm doing all the things that they're saying I'm supposed to do. I'm doing the emotional thing. And it's not working. No one's signing up. No one's filling out an application to our school, whatever. And I think it's important. It's an important thing to address that, these types of things you have to be honest about what the commitment really, really is about. And honestly, like, I feel more validation and I trust a brand more that is honest about, not just painting everything in a rosy light that, our brand is perfect. It's gonna be great. You're not going to struggle here. But I appreciate that. And that's why I think stories are really, really effective, is that you're not pitching, you're telling a story of struggle. And I think that's what I really encourage schools to do, is like, look for where the pain is, look for where the struggle is. Adult students, I mean, like you said, they're everywhere. It's easy to find, because like a traditional college student coming out of high school, they're just like flowing down that river, like, at least for me, like, since I could remember, I knew I was going to go to college. A lot of first generation college students, that might not be the case. So that's where an opportunity for storytelling is. But usually an adult student, like, it's like there's something interesting going on. Like, you're going back to school. Like, why? What's going on? Let's talk about that. And let's talk about how that's going to be tough to fit that into your life. When you're 18, 19, that's just your life.
Right.
That's just, you just go from living at home to now living at college and going to different classes. And, but when you're an adult, I can't imagine, I have 2 kids. And I already feel like if I want to do anything extra, I'm getting up at 4 a.m, or I'm staying up till 11, 12 at night to get it done. And the stories that I've, told of adult students, a lot of times are like that. It's just like, you have to do it in these fringe hours, and it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and it's a great point. Two of my employees have recently just started coursework for their master's degrees. Their kids are out of the house, but it's something that they wanted to do, but life got in the way. And even, they're studying at Muhlenberg and they work at Muhlenberg, and it's still, they were anxious and a little bit trepidatious about it. So imagine being from the outside coming in, being out of school for, in some cases 20, 30 years and coming back to get a degree or finish your bachelor's. That's an intimidating thing to be in a college classroom again with, in some cases with 17, 18, 19-year-olds. It's an intimidating thing as an adult. And so, yeah, I agree. Addressing those challenges up front is a great way to create authenticity.
It's like Adam Sandler and Billy Madison going back to high school.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I would totally feel like that. I would be like, I was cool when I was in college. I am not cool anymore.
No.
So I just got to find a way to stay out of the way.
Right. And that's why it's so different to market to adult learners. The campus experience, facilities, dining, recreation, those things, they may be important to some. Most adult students are using this degree as a means to some sort of end of improvement, to a better job, career advancement, completing a lifelong goal, pursuing their passion. So it's a very different way to sell your institution. And one of the reasons I mentioned the conference sessions and things like that is because, we're so used to selling the experience of undergraduate traditional age college. So pivoting to a completely different set of values for adult students is a challenge. And, I'm not sure many institutions are ready to face it head on. I think we're just hoping, we have these programs. Let's hope students show up and enroll.
Right. Yeah. So talk about the content that you guys create. How do you think about content creation in light of an adult learner?
Yeah. So definitely starting from that point of realizing this is an emotional roller coaster. We always think about the traditional age student. The excitement of going back to school is something that's unique. For the adult learner, that excitement can be overshadowed by nerves. Can I do this? Can I afford this? Is this going to interrupt my life? All those questions that people ask themselves. We have to address those where those questions aren't necessarily being asked by traditional students. They're excited for the journey. They want the experience. They want to be away from home. They want that change. Adult learners are doing this in spite of the ways it's going to change their life. So if we're not messaging in that way, if we're saying this is going to be seamless, this is going to be easy, then we're not telling the truth, to be frank, because it's not easy and it's not seamless. You're going to have to sacrifice some things. But I think that authenticity and that openness goes a long way with the adult students. We just did a video series of 5 adult learners, alumni of ours. And one of the things we really tried to convey in those videos was, how did it feel to come back to school? Not what makes Muhlenberg so great. I can do that anytime.
Right.
But how did you feel, and how did Muhlenberg help address those feelings? One of the students we interviewed is a working mom. And at the time of coming back to school, she had a 1-year-old. It was peak pandemic. And she was working full time. And she was 1 semester shy of graduating about 10 years ago and couldn't get financial aid. So she stopped out. Ugh. So this person was coming back to school after a decade with all of those life circumstances going on. And so, when we interviewed her, we didn't ask her a single question about Muhlenberg. There's no need. She's telling us that she did all of this during a pandemic with a 1-year-old, with a husband, working full time. That right there addresses all of the things that we're trying to address. The flexibility, convenience.
Exactly.
She was able to afford it with that, with all those extra expenses and things. So I think it's really important, more so with the adult student, to tell those kind of personal stories. And that's what we really focus on, is getting as many testimonials, quotes, finding the good stories. They're easy to find with adult learners.
Yeah.
So really just trying to connect one-on-one with people that are maybe experiencing some of the same feelings. I think that's a great way to connect with your audience.
Quick break here to dispel a myth. That myth is this: if you already have an internal videographer or video team at your college, then it doesn't make sense for us to work together. Now, you may be expecting me to say, oh, that's a myth, it's not true. Well, actually, in some cases, it is true. If you maybe have a robust video team, multiple people manning multiple different stations and operations, and you're telling stories, and when your marketing team has an idea for a video, you can get that pushed through the video team relatively quickly. Like, you're not going to be waiting around for months and months for them to get to that project in the queue. That's a perfect case where you're probably good. God bless you. Go take on the world. But maybe you're one of these schools where budgets are a little tighter. Roles are combined. Your social media manager is also your content creator. Those are two separate jobs, by the way. Well, that's what my friend Shar, who at the time we recorded this, she was doing both for the institution she works at. She was the social media manager and the videographer and the photographer. Since recording this with her, they've actually moved her into a full-time videographer, photographer, content creator role. And for her sake, I'm super pumped for her. But I'm going to let her tell you about her experience with our video storytelling subscriptions and how partnering with us, in addition to the internal video work she was already doing, helped her be able to focus on the many other priorities that she had. So here's Shar.
The video subscription idea was a real godsend for me. It's been kind of life-changing in a way. I don't know if that's too strong of a statement. On a couple of different levels. As a social media manager, it was really fantastic to have this entire campaign, if you will, of student testimonials. I know that for my channels, I'm going to get a new video every single month. There's a lot of content to produce and not a lot of content creators here. So having somebody who can take that portion off my plate, it's allowed me a little bit of room to breathe and maybe focus on some other projects. Not only do you get a fully edited testimonial, you also get a delivery of all of the B-roll that was taken of that student. For instance, we have this culinary institute. And one of the projects we wanted to do is to create just a short little video connected to a QR code that on all the little chocolates that we give out in the restaurant, or if they make chocolates for a special event or for our board members or for any meetings or graduation, they can scan this QR code and up pops this video of some like really beautiful slow-mo hands making chocolate and that sort of thing. And I was able to go into this B-roll and find some fantastic shots of one of our students who did a testimonial creating these bonbons and creating cakes, and you've got the batter going and you've got the chocolate drizzling. So I know that I'm going to be able to take that footage, resize it. I can resize it vertically if I need it. I can resize it into a 1x1 if I need it. I can color grade it however I need to fit my needs. And I really don't have to travel across the state to our culinary institute to do a whole new shoot, because I've got that B footage at my hands. So really, that's something that I could sit down, edit for a couple of hours, have it done, and check it off the list, which is fantastic.
So if you'd like to get like Shar and bring in an outside partner like Unveiled, you can go to unveiled.tv and book a call with me. That's unveiled.tv. All right, back to the show. Tell me how you guys have kind of differentiated this, these programs that you, because when we were talking in our pre-interview, you were talking about how differentiation kind of looks a little bit different. It's not so much differentiating based on like the logic of what you're providing. It's more about, the emotional side of things. Just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me would be just listening to what your stakeholders are saying is important to them. I think being open to feedback from students, to me, some of the most valuable feedback I could ever get is from students that have like applied or acquired but did not enroll. because that just tells me where we're maybe lacking. So I think the easiest way to differentiate when we're talking about any age group of student is stakeholder feedback, voice of the customer research, and then acting on that research. And sometimes that means changing a program structure, changing cost of tuition, changing how we're offering the program. So I think just hearing pain points and hearing why somebody might have chosen another school, I think it's a great way to differentiate it. And, you know, your programs at the end of the day need to be competitive, especially with adult learners, which I think we'll probably get into a little bit more in detail later on. But, you know, the quality of academics is still really important to our students. Muhlenberg has an excellent reputation for quality academics.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, especially on the graduate side of things, that's something that students still find incredibly valuable. But on the, you know, on the whole, we're all kind of doing the same thing. You know, we actually don't have an MBA, but everybody's got an MBA. Everybody's got a master's in public health or an MFA. But what makes your school different? And I think that's where the emotional piece comes into it. I think that's where, you know, displaying and talking about how your institution solved some of those pain points is an incredibly valuable tool to use when communicating to adult students.
Yeah.
You know, think of anything. I couldn't afford it. I didn't have enough time. I have 3 kids and I need to be at their, you know, T-ball games. Anything that you can think of, how did Muhlenberg sort of allow you to fit that into your life and also complete your degree or get your master's degree? So I think taking that voice of the customer research and then explaining, here's how Muhlenberg can help you solve these things and address your concerns is probably, in terms of storytelling, is probably the most powerful way that I can think of differentiating one institution versus another when we're talking about, you know, pretty close to apples type of offerings.
Yeah, that's perfect. Because when we're talking apples to apples, it really is, I think, the next level of differentiation is telling those stories and telling them better, you know, than other schools. You know, because if you can hook someone with a story, like, you know, it's not enough just to tell a story. Like, you have to get someone to watch it and watch it all the way through. So if you can do that better and leave them with an emotional dent, you know, of your brand on their psyche or whatever, that's a differentiator. You know.
Yeah, and I think one important point to make would be that doesn't always mean having the biggest budget of any school.
Right.
You know, find a videographer on staff, great. If you don't, find an agency or firm that either maybe somebody is an adult learner. I like to look for firms that specialize in like documentary style work, because I know that we can tell a story differently than other schools are doing, at least in our area, our competitors. And that doesn't mean we have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this crazy video campaign. We could spend modestly and still really tell compelling stories.
Yeah. Yes. For people listening, I really vibe with that, because there's kind of 2 camps. Well, I would say 3 camps of videographer. As you go up in the camps, you can't say videographer anymore. Filmmaker. You know, so, but there's like the solo, like kind of freelancer videographer, one-man band kind of thing, just does everything, audio, everything, asks the questions while the cameras are on tripods, you know, all that stuff. On the other end of the spectrum, there's like the commercial agencies where you can't get an interview shot for less than $10,000, you know, and I know because I have to be, when I'm hiring crew around the country, because that's how we work with schools all over, is we partner with crews that we've vetted, and I'm always, it's the same like you said, I'm looking for that crew that understands documentary and understands kind of a run and gun approach, because we're not going to have $10,000 to have 10 people on set to film an interview that would look just as good if I hired the right person to do it by himself. You know? So
yeah, cost does not equal quality all the time.
Right. It does not. Yeah, so there's those two extremes, and then there's somewhere in the middle where I think, there's small cruise type stuff, and that's kind of where I kind of lean. I think you can get a lot of value. I'm not saying there's incredible value in hiring a full crew commercial production. It's a different world. To step onto a set and step into a mode of pre-production and production and post-production that is very like, in quote unquote, the right way to do it. Like that's the traditional way to get a video made or a commercial made, is to have 50 people involved and all doing one different thing. And it's, for an agency, huge budget stuff, you need that. You can't have one guy running around, filming a Pepsi commercial with his iPhone. There's too much at stake there. But when we're talking about, just day-to-day content creation and doing quality storytelling, you can do a lot of quality storytelling with an outside agency by finding that right sort of niche that's going to understand how to get a commercial look without a commercial crew.
Right. Yeah. And I think from one important point I would add to that would be from the student's perspective. Another video series a couple years back at a different institution with similar students and good stories, but the set and the agency we hired, they did fantastic work, but it was a production. I mean, there was everything from stuff that people are not used to. Mm-hmm. So walking onto that set, every single student, including our president, which we did an interview with her, every single person's reaction was, "Oh wow, this is lights, camera, action." Well, that immediately then for that student or that interviewee is intimidating.
Right.
So now we're losing a little bit of authenticity. Whereas if you're getting a smaller crew, and who knows, maybe you as the marketer or somebody has to ask the questions or do the interview, there's a level of connection that you can build by having a smaller operation that I think makes it a little bit more intimate as well.
Yeah, students of any age coming into film and interview, I would say my experience is the same. Almost all of them are surprised at how much more gear there is to film. They thought it was going to be a guy with a little, camcorder on a little dinky tripod, and they were just going to like point it at them and ask them questions. Like there's like lights and there's like a microphone and stuff like that. So like that's something that you do have to be really cognizant of. And I did some work for University of Michigan Ross School of Business several years ago through my previous production company I worked at. And the head videographer there was super smart. And he was like, "We're going to bring these students in and I don't want to see you guys." Like we were like on the edges of this room that we were in. Ross School of Business has like a big atrium that's like gorgeous, and there's like students milling about and eating and studying and stuff. So we could kind of blend in. But we were like way out of the way because they didn't want that to affect these students interacting with each other and having this, because they were doing kind of like a like if you see like on reality TV, they sit down and talk about something, So they were trying to do that. So yeah, it's sometimes it is a strategic move to simplify.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but most students, especially traditional students, but even adult learners, are used to interacting with the camera on their phone and either just themselves or a friend or family member. So having a 12-person crew with 3 cameras and a camera on a movable track and a stylist and all this stuff is it's overwhelming, and I think it loses authenticity from the second they walk in the room.
Yeah, there's so many tools available. The barrier entry for video is so low that everyone wants to be Steven Spielberg, and I see some of these videos where I'm like, dude, come on, just ask the questions. Stop sliding the camera all over the place. Anyway, this is not a podcast about hiring videographer. But on that note, you and I were vibing in our pre-interview about video cliches. And so I want to talk about that because it kind of relates to differentiation. And we were talking about how, when you go like to someone's YouTube page, it's like the same video at the top of let's play a game. So like, the game would be, if I never see blank in a college video ever again, I will be happy. What is the blank? What are the blanks for you?
How long do we have for this recording? Off the top of my head, I can think of a couple, lab coats, Bunsen burners, stock footage of a boardroom, things like that.
Yes.
No offense to the presidents out there, but I think in a marketing video, why is the president in the video?
Yes. Preach it.
Things like that. And of course, I'm being a little tongue in cheek, but and then the scripts themselves, I think, are, you can always tell when a script has been written and looked at by dozens of people, because there's like this grandiose poetic sort
Exactly.
of prose that is absolutely not connecting with a 17-year-old.
No, absolutely not.
So those are, I just think, in general, I think the concept of the Saturday afternoon college football promo that schools get that are on TV, trying to address every single audience you possibly can in a 30-second video. It just becomes, we can only address so many audiences in one video before it just becomes noise with nice drone shots of campus.
Yeah.
So I think in general, I would challenge higher ed to focus on more personal, granular video subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And that, think of your student personas. Everybody's got them. Everybody has them made and written down. So are we addressing those personas with the video that we're making? Does this person, in the planetarium address the first generation student that is a Pell student, that, their parents' biggest concern is, how am I going to pay for this? I don't want my student to have student loan debt for the rest of their life. Does that stock footage of the B-roll of the boardroom, does that footage of the president, meeting and greeting, does that address that? Or can we use the president in another way to do a sit down type of message to address some of those concerns?
Yes.
So I would say in general, that sort of broad, grandiose university spot is, I just don't know. Maybe it's landing, maybe it's not. But to me, as a marketer watching some of that, it's just kind of, it's overdone. It is, it's not authentic. I'd rather see people focus on those kind of personal connections and making a video for one person, because that one person is hundreds of people that are experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, I really tune into that too. Like, I'm too lazy to get in my car and like turn on CarPlay and then like open up, Amazon Music and put on. So I listen to the radio a lot. It's just faster. It's just ready made. And so I listen to a lot of radio ads, and I'm always tuned into the scripts that are, I'm actually tuned out of the scripts. I'm tuned into why I'm tuned out of them because these scripts for these companies, it's a bank, it's a college, it's a whatever, and it's this poetic, and you don't have any visuals to supplement that. So you're just listening to this sort of emotive song and this poetic thing. And like, exactly. This sounds like it has been filtered through 12 people who don't understand marketing. Mm-hmm. It sounds really inspiring to you. But that's not going to, like, it's not believable. I'm always I'll flip the station. Like, if someone starts talking in a scripted, poetic way, bye. Because I know it's not authentic. And that's not to say that you never do that in a video. Especially creating like a broadcast spot where you've got 30 seconds and you're paying tons of money to have this thing air on TV. It's got to cast a wide net. You got to think strategically about how to do that in a way that's not just like, okay, yeah, heard this before.
Right.
So yeah, just be very careful when you're scripting things, because whether it's Gen Z, whether it's an adult student, people see right through that.
Yeah, when I was at the community college level, we were trying to, like everybody, do something that would catch people's attention. And I don't know if you're familiar, maybe like 5 years ago, there were those Microsoft AI commercials with Common, the rapper. And he was on a stage in like a theater. It was empty. But we wanted to recreate something like that. So much so that I actually reached out to Common's agency. So if you listen to this, Common, he never got back to us, but
still waiting.
See if he would do something pro bono. But we found a student in the theater program that could sort of pull off that vibe. And one of the things we really wanted to do was address this idea of community college being a place where people are settling. So the theme was it's not just community college anymore. And we talked about, there were Pulitzer Prize winners, there were CEOs, there's an Oscar winner that graduated from there. So kind of addressing all those things. So we still touched on a lot of audiences, but we did it in a way that is, I think, different from those kind of grandiose videos. We did it in a little bit more of a hopefully a cutting edge way.
Yeah.
So that was one that I think I'm proud of. And some of the best scripts I've ever written are based on some of the stuff I just told you about what I don't want to see in videos. So it's interesting to look around, especially as a higher ed marketer, to look around and see some of these videos that are winning awards and things like that, and just wondering to yourself, who's that video for?
Who is this for? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I ask all the time. I swear that question goes off in my mind every day. Who is this for? I'm like scrolling on, I don't know. I'm just very clued into like, cause I think about it for my business and for this podcast. And it's just stuff that I mull over a lot. And I'm always scrolling going like, why did I like that? Why didn't I like that? This felt like it was trying to be directed at me, but it totally wasn't,
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. And, granted, it's way easier to be on the outside looking in at a commercial or piece of advertising and being able to pick it apart. I can do that all day long. But meanwhile, I'm probably putting out content that is going against everything I'm saying because I'm so close to it.
Right.
So I want to be careful of not be too critical, because it really is difficult when you're writing a script or whatever, and maybe you're trying to address an adult student. It is tough to get outside of yourself and really get a sense for what an adult student is going to resonate with. I would say, like, I want schools to go like, what would the commercial look like if we couldn't mention our school's name? Could it be like you were mentioning, someone on theater or something like that? Like, what if someone was in like Hamilton or something like that, and they were just on a stage by themselves, and they just did a cool little performance that's like hip hop and like cool, and then at the end it was just like graduate of, well, then you'd have to mention the school, but we won't count that, graduate of such and such, this is the year, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, that person became that. Like that's so much more powerful than saying you can be this great thing, you're going to get a job after school, like show me, don't tell me kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So what are some stories tell me some stories. You've told me some already but that your team has told that you felt like really resonated with the adult learner. Help listeners to understand like what's working.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned it's usually the stories of challenges. I think that's something that really resonates with people. Everybody is experiencing life challenges every day. Yeah, I mentioned the working mom that had the 1-year-old, and where the video is actually being produced now of this student, but we did an article on this student, one of the most incredible people I've ever come across. She is a mother of 4. She is I don't know, I forget her exact rank offhand in the military, but she's a 20-year military veteran. She came back to Muhlenberg after leaving the military to finish her bachelor's degree, and then went immediately into graduate school. So she's got a job. She's a working mom of 4, military veteran. And for our graduate programs, we have this capstone project, almost like a full year long project that students work on with real companies, solving problems that they have. Her capstone project was it was called Refreshing the Force, retraining suicide intervention officers in the military. She was a suicide intervention officer, and she had this experience that a friend of hers, a fellow service member, was in crisis. She was the person that she called. Luckily, this person is still with us. She was able to assist, but in that situation, she realized that her training that she received 10 years ago was not up to today's standards. So that's where she came up with this idea, and that idea, which turned into a graduate capstone project, turned into a project that was picked up for funding by the Pennsylvania National Guard.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, talk about impactful work and outcomes and things like that. But she's one of the most incredible people I've ever spoken to. So that one really jumps to mind.
That's really cool.
But again, it's a story of somebody with immense challenges in their life,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody who's extremely busy, extremely accomplished, but still wanted to do this thing that she had never gotten a chance to do. And so I think those are the ones that really resonate. Another one we're working on is I think he graduated last year, but he was out of college for like 30 years and came back to finish his bachelor's degree. And it was actually supposed to be a surprise for his family. They didn't know that he was doing it.
Oh, cool.
So that was a really cool story to tell too. But I think it's just those people achieving something in the face of a challenge
Yes.
can be really impactful.
I would watch those all day long. I would go on if I was trying to go back to school and I was learning about a school, I would just binge a bunch of those because like that to me is interesting. Like I want to know what other challenges people have been through that are like me. And I want to know if I can, can I see myself achieving these results? And that's totally different than just talking about your school and putting drone shots over top of it.
Right. And that, the message of caring, dedicated faculty and staff takes on a new meaning when you've got people in those kind of circumstances.
Exactly.
And it, like we said before, it may not be somebody's exact scenario, but somebody seeing another student overcome those types of challenges might make their trepidation or their anxiety about going back to school seem minor. Hey, if this person could do this with with 4 kids or working during COVID with a 1-year-old, then I think I can too.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Let's see. Last question here would be, could put a bow on it for us. So schools that have a growing adult population or an established one, they want to put into practice some of these things that we talked about today. Like what would be some, a couple of key takeaways?
Yeah. So I think one would be listen to your students, listen to their feedback, positive and negative, and then put that feedback into action. Don't just do surveys and things like that to check a box, but use the surveys. I mean, these are people that experienced your program and your institution firsthand. That's better than any sort of anecdotal faculty and staff feedback that we always hear. So that would be one. And then 2, I think again, just start from a place of understanding that this is not the same as a traditional student going to college.
Yeah.
Think back to that time. It's the most exciting time of your life to that point. Fast forward 20 years, and it's a really nerve-wracking thing. So I think really separating those two audiences and the emotions they're feeling are incredibly important.
Yes, I agree. I love the charge about listening because we talk about that a lot on this podcast. If you're not listening, you're not getting stories. And if you're not having stories, you have no storytelling, strategy. So yeah, if all you're doing is surveys, that's not going to give you the what would be qualitative data that you need in order to really understand the emotions behind that data and where someone is coming from. So I love that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So where can people connect with you at?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm still on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. Sorry, Elon. I'm not going to at Shane_Baglini. And then you can just find me on LinkedIn at Shane Baglini, or feel free to shoot me an email, shanebaglini@muhlenberg.edu.
Cool. Well, Shane, thanks for being here. Really, really loved our conversation. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, likewise, John. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. 3 things I want to give you before you go. Number 1, reminder to sign up for my free weekly newsletter, all about creating content that resonates emotionally with your audience. And you can do that at unveiled.tv/newsletter. Unveiled is spelled UNVEILD. Number 2, if you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Share it with your team, your boss, your dog, whatever. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love for you to do that. Number 3, reach out to me. If you have comments, questions, you want to talk about a video project, whatever, my email is john@unveiled.tv. John is spelled JOHN, or follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my last name is spelled AZONI. That's all for today, and I look forward to catching you on the next episode of the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast. Thanks.